Good afternoon, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome from my side to the Hertie School and to Berlin, and to all of you who I understand might be watching us online either today or at a later point. So my name is Christina Reh, and I'm the Dean of Graduate Programs here at the school. I joined the Hertie School in September, so I'm still relatively new to the place. I came from London, where I spent 11 years at University College, and, well, then came here. And I'm also a professor of European politics, which is my area of expertise. So I research and teach EU politics, EU institutions, and the contestation of Europe, about which you know. It's great to see you all here. Maybe a few words about the rest of the afternoon. You've probably seen the program, but after my talk, I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Slava Jankin, who's going to talk about artificial intelligence and whether it's changing public policy. Slava is just building up our new data lab, and he's an expert in data science with a particular interest in AI. And then afterwards, from 4 p.m., you have the chance to meet further colleagues of mine and of our recruitment team, colleagues from curricular affairs, careers, and also to do a campus tour so that you get a better feel for the school. So, for me to get a better feel who I'm talking to, just out of curiosity, who joins us from Berlin? Berlin, quite a few. Other places in Germany? Okay, so 50-50. Further afield, anyone? Also quite a few. Okay, well, welcome to very warm welcome to everyone. And also just for me to understand where you stand in the process, how many of you hold an offer already from us? Okay, right. Also half roughly have already applied. Another few and are thinking about applying for the rest. Okay, great. So I hope I can give you a better sense of what we do here at the school, what the school is, and then in particular what the programs are, which is perhaps hardest to gauge from the web. So a few words about the Hertie School. So the Hertie School is a public policy school, and in that sense, unique in Germany. It's got an international, interdisciplinary focus and a focus on all three sectors. So public sector, private sector, and third sector, which matters to us a lot in our research and in our teaching. We also have quite a strong European focus, and as you know, obviously we're located in Berlin, but we cooperate with a lot of very internationally highly recognized partners, more than 30 of those, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them when I talk about dual degrees and exchange opportunities later on. We're a private university, but we're not for profit, and we're accredited by both the German state and by the German Science Council. So a little bit about our history. So the school was founded in 2003, 2004, and we've been accredited to award master's degrees since 2005 and PhD degrees since 2012. We teach in English, we operate in English, and we've got about 600 students on campus at the moment in our master's programs, in our executive master of public administration, and in our doctoral programs. We also do executive education in case anyone is interested in not doing a full degree program, but just joining us, for example, for individual courses or for open enrollment or certificates. Our president is Hendrik Enderlein, who's a political economist with a particular focus on the Eurozone. Our managing director, Dr. Axel Beisch, and we have more than 30 full-time professors who work in very different areas, very different disciplines, law, economics, sociology, political science, but who are all sort of united in their international experience, in their research activity. They are all top scholars in their field, and all of them really care about outreach as well. So as a university, we're very strongly committed to also speaking to and, to an extent, influencing the public debate. A little bit of background information of where we are headed. If you're coming to a place, you probably want to know sort of what makes us tick intellectually in terms of our research, our teaching, and our outreach. So we're very lucky to be generously funded by the Hertie Foundation, and they've just increased their funding to us, and they've increased their funding to us in view of letting us sharpen our analytical and our intellectual focus. So what we're doing at the moment is we have built up and are in the process of building up centers of competences in areas which we think really matter in the public policy debate, intellectual debate, and you can see them here. You can see the Center for International Security Policy and the Center for European Affairs, which are already up and running and starting with this academic year. And we're in the process of building up 3 more on fundamental rights, on digital governance, and on sustainability. And all these centers are supported by the data lab, which Slava is running, who's going to talk to you later. So these are, in a sense, what we consider the challenges or the most pressing challenges of modern governance, which is why we want to be right there in researching these and in teaching these challenges, of course. So I've told you we've got 605 students on campus, but we have lots of students who are no longer on campus, but are still part of our alumni network, more than 1,500 in more than 95 countries. And we've several alumni chapters, so some of you joined us from afar, and we really try to work together with them very closely. For example, in October, we had an alumni reunion in London, and we're going to have another one in June in Mexico City, and we're really trying to strengthen building up our relations more every year. So I'm just coming right now from a lunch we had where 2 alumni came in, one from the EMPA, and then an MPP student, Claudia Müller, who graduated in 2012, and she talked to current students about what it's like to start a company after you've been employed in the public sector, in her case in the Bundesbank. So she now works in female finance. That's her new area and her startup. We had a really fascinating discussion with a lot of students, other alumni, PhD students joining and quizzing her about what it's like to be an alumna of Hertie and then go into these different areas. That was very interesting for me as well. Right, so just that was a little bit of background about the school, about the importance that our alumni play for us and our sort of global network we have here. But I wanted to focus my main part, or the main part of my talk, really on explaining the programs a little bit more, because I presume this is what you may have most questions about as well. So again, just for me to get a better sense who you are. So how many of you are interested mainly in the MPP, the Master of Public Policy? All right, and the Master of International Affairs? All right, a few more MPP. Okay, I'm going to talk about both programs, and both programs are obviously different, but they share also many similarities. So both really are about challenges of modern governance and how to tackle them. And the MPP is focused on public policy, and the MIA on global policy, global public policy, international affairs. But both really share our main aims. And our main aims are to train you as future graduates who are academically excellent, who have a basic training in both economics and research methods with a focus on data science, who are practice-oriented, so always have an eye on the real world, and who are internationally minded. These are 4 points that really unite both programs. When I say internationally minded, I also, or in the first place, mean you. So our students, this is the current cohort, the students who started in October. You can see they come from all over the world. We've got about 40% Germans, about 17% students from other European countries. You see Asia, 12%, North America and South America, strong showing, and some students also from Africa and Australia and New Zealand. So it's of course really exciting to work with students from all over the world, both for us as teachers and for you as peers of those students. If you're wondering whether Hertie is for you because you've studied a particular subject or haven't studied a particular subject, you will also be interested to see that our students have very different backgrounds. Right? A lot of them come from the social sciences, so have degrees in political science, for example, sociology, social studies, but we've got quite a few economists and business students as well. 10% of students come from the humanities, so they haven't necessarily studied public policy before. And in many cases, for these students, it's very exciting to start a new, sort of a master's program in a new area. Right? And if you've got questions about that, do come and talk to me and curricular affairs later on. We've got some lawyers, and we even have some scientists and engineers among our current cohort. So let me talk a little bit about the MPP first, the Master of Public Policy, right? Which is a program that offers you an analytically challenging and a problem-driven orientation in 3 areas, right? Modern governance, policy analysis, or management and leadership. Right? What we also put a real premium on, and I'll talk about that in a moment when I show you the actual curriculum and how it plays out or would play out over your 2 years of studies, right? Also put a premium on real-world experience in the public sector, private sector, or the third sector. And it's very important for us that you're trained in an interdisciplinary way, right? That you get a perspective on public policy, which is not just political science, but which is also law, which is economics, which is data science, and which is sociology. Okay? And we put a lot of emphasis on research methods, which we think are absolutely crucial if you want to analyze and understand public policy, and if you want to basically navigate the current, ever more complex world of governance. So this is what your curriculum would look like, and I'm going to talk you through this a little bit because, okay. So in your first year, say you were joining us in September, we would do a number of things with you. We would give you the core training we think you need as a public policy student, later scholar or analyst. And these are courses in the policy process, these are courses in public management, and in law and governance. We also train you in economics, as I mentioned before, and we train you in statistics, data analytics skills. I'll talk about the concentration in a moment, but have a look at what is happening over the summer and what is happening at the far right end of the puzzle pieces and in the project course. So this is this real-world experience I mentioned before. Right? The PDCs are professional development courses where you have the chance to train skills such as negotiation, for example, skills such as for example, speech writing or learning R as a programming skill. We've got a project course where you would be working with a project partner and a professor on a current issue that is of relevance to the practice partner on that course. And over the summer, you would all be doing an internship of 6 weeks. Some of you would want more practice experience during your studies, and you can do that too. We've got something called the professional year, which I'm going to talk about a little later, but which would mean you take a full 1-year break and come back to us at the end of that year to basically do your second year in your sort of third year. If you're on the public policy masters, you then have the chance to concentrate in one of 2 areas. If you're more interested in policy analysis, if you're the data type, if you want to train up in quantitative skills, then you would probably choose the area of concentration which is called policy analysis. If you're someone who's really interested in what makes organizations tick, who wants to really think about management and leadership, the public sector, in perhaps NGOs and international organizations, you may be more suited for the management and leadership area of concentration. And depending on which concentration you choose, you will have a different course in your first year. If you're of the analytics type, you would take statistics 2. If you're of the management and organization type, you would take management and leadership. So after your first year, you leave us for a while, you do your internship, or you even do a professional year, and then you come back in your second year where there's a lot of choice around your area of concentration. You have to take a number of courses that fit with your area of concentration, and where you write your master's thesis, which is your own independent piece of work. You do independent research, sometimes in teams, sometimes with a practice partner, always with one of our professors in an area of your interest and expertise. And you work a lot on that, basically at this time of year in your second year, and it's 12,000 words long. So this is the MPP curriculum. Here's a little bit more information on the two areas of concentration. Already we said the policy analysis one focuses much more on policy analysis, evaluation, study of impact, how to evaluate and improve public policy. Right? The management and organization much more on the tools of leading and managing organizations across sectors. Just to give you a bit of a flavor of the courses you could be taking, for example, as electives. In policy analysis, we have a lot of courses on data science, for example. We've got courses on taxation. We've got courses on electricity systems modeling. So they are a broad offer. On management and organization, for example, we have a course on policy disasters, or we've got a course on how to handle diversity in the public sector, which is obviously a challenging subject. So this is the MPP, right? Master of Public Policy. Is any one of you hesitating still between sort of which degree to apply for? Is anyone particularly interested in the differences between the two programs? No, you're all set sort of either or. Okay, then let me talk about the MIA. Maybe that might change your mind either way. So the MIA is our Masters of International Affairs, and what we're seeking to do with this program is really to prepare students or people who are already working for positions that require you to really understand global affairs, right? Global policy challenges in government, diplomacy, international organizations, and the private sector and civil society. Now, if you look at the sort of puzzle pieces, a lot of it is quite similar to the MPP. Right? So let me perhaps point out the similarities first. Right? So also if you do the MIA in the first year, you have a number of core modules, core courses, which we think are key if you want to understand modern international relations. Right? We do international organizations with you, we do global governance, we do international security, and we do international law. Like the public policy students, we train you in economics, right? So the two economics courses and in statistics. And as our MPP students, you have this strong practice component with these professional development courses I talked about, the internship or professional years I mentioned in relation to the MPP, and sort of your equivalent, the MIA equivalent of the project course would be international negotiation, which is a hands-on course where you learn international negotiation techniques, for example, diplomatic negotiations or conflict resolution. So again, you leave us after the first year, do your internship or a professional year, and then you come back, and as is the case in the MPP, you choose a concentration. The two concentrations on the MIA are finance and trade, which is essentially international political economy, right, where you focus on national and international economic institutions and their impact, right, on fields such as trade, such as competition, such as growth. Or you may be more interested in security and sustainability. So questions of, or you might be interested in a comprehensive approach to security, right, including issues such as human rights, climate change, as well as what we more sort of traditionally associate with security, such as diplomacy and sort of geopolitical and military challenges. Just to give you a flavor again of what some of the courses we are offering under that area of concentration. For example, under security and sustainability, we have a course called Politics of Terrorism, or we have got a course which looks at communication technology and how that impacts protests, right, and contentious politics. In finance and trade, for example, we have a course on the political economy of development in Asia. So in that particular area, you would study obviously more IPE-type topics. We briefly go back to the curriculum. So in the second year, you elect quite a lot of courses from your area of concentration. There are also courses you can choose completely freely. And like in the MPP, you will write a master's thesis under the supervision of one of our professors, sometimes with a practice partner, sometimes with a colleague, with a peer. Quite a few students who team up for their master's thesis. So this is an overview of the two programs and the way they are structured. And if you are interested sort of in the entirety of our offer, would recommend you go to our course catalog where you can search by program and you can search by area of concentration. Now, usually there are lots of questions about the program, how it's structured, what the differences are between the two masters. Shall we have a round of questions right now before I move on and talk a little bit more about professional year, dual degrees? Does anyone have any immediate questions? Yes?
I have a question. Are the elective courses different in both courses, or can you choose from some other courses different electives from, the master program?
Yeah. So your question is in a sense how much the master program and your area of concentration determines what you do.
No, like in the master international, the MIP and the MIA elective courses, are they similar? Can you choose some elective courses from the MIA courses you're doing the international policy one, public policy one, or must you stick to the MIP electives?
Right. So the question is about choice and whether if you're on the MPP you can only choose MPP electives and vice versa. So I just move away from the microphone for a moment. So see these portfolio electives, right? For these electives you have free choice. So you can choose any elective that is offered in the school under any area of concentration, and some of them are just offered freely. We do, however, just to manage expectations, if someone is in that particular concentration area and the course is listed under it, these students will be given priority. But if you study for the MPP, you can take MRA courses and the other way around. So your program will, depending on how you actually choose, your programs can look quite similar, even the MPP and the MIA. Other questions straight away? Yeah, the back.
Are courses such as economics, are there students from both degrees who are taking the same class?
Yes. So I'm sorry, moving away for a second. Econ 1 and Econ 2. So the Economics 1, all students take together, and they are streamed by ability, not by program. And we have an introductory track and an advanced track. And then for Economics 2, we offer different, so there are different courses with different thematic areas. Right? And there will be one on international economics, for example, which the MRA students like to take often. There's one on climate and growth, for example, which is open to both programs. So with economics, you are going to mix very much across programs. So you're going to separate more by how much do you know about economics already, because we don't want to teach someone who studied, literature and someone who already holds a degree in economics or econometrics or maths together. That's challenging, I think, for everyone. I think was there a question over here? Yeah.
Is it the same for the statistics courses? Do you offer different?
Yes, that is the same for the statistics course. Thanks for asking. It just says statistics. And again, we split into an intro and a more advanced version of statistics 1. That's correct. Yeah. So here.
I don't know if you meant to raise it now or later, but I was wondering about the average class size and if there's a split between lecture and discussion courses, and what's the ratio of the split?
Yeah. So how we teach is the question, basically. Okay. So with the exception of economics and statistics, where we've got lectures, big lectures, and then the students split into labs, we teach in seminars. And the seminars have a maximum size of 24. So, for example, if there is, let's say, 75 students on the MIA, we would teach each of the introductory or the core courses 3 times. So, and also likewise with the electives, with the concentration electives, we cap at 24. And I think our average class size for the electives this semester is, I think, 18 or 19. Yeah. So we teach in seminars because we think at master's level, okay, economics and statistics are very particular in a sense where the lecture style and the labs work very well, but we think in general teaching in seminars allows for better interaction, for better discussion. Yeah. It's more appropriate, we think, for graduate teaching. Yes?
In the curriculum, where do you include qualitative research methods courses?
Yeah, so we don't at the moment. Yeah? It's something we are reflecting on at the moment because we teach our students in quantitative methods, we teach them in statistics. Some of us do integrate qualitative methods in their classes. I'll give you 2 examples. So one of our colleagues who teaches the policy process course, Lukas Graf, he's an expert in education policy. He would do a lot of process tracing, comparative case studies in the introduction to public policy. Or in my own class, which is on the European Union, globalization and the state, I do a lot of qualitative comparative methods as part of the course. Then I do quite a bit of research design. Other than that, we do it in a very decentralized way in the master thesis colloquium, where you work with a particular supervisor, and mostly your supervisor will be of a similar methodological angle than you. But it is something we are thinking about at the moment, how to integrate this into the curriculum. And there are different ideas we have in terms of how this can be done. Yeah. Okay, question at the back.
You asked if somebody's not a
Scientist? Yeah. Social scientist also, yeah.
No, if you haven't decided yet which study course you want to take.
Yeah.
Now I would like to know what is like the main difference, or what are where can you work at the end, like some differences.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk about careers and sort of our students' destinations in the end. So I think where you end up working is a combination of many things, obviously, but it is a combination of your degree. Obviously, it's a combination of what you choose to specialize in. I think if you have the future job market in mind, then I think one of the key questions you need to answer is what you write your thesis in. So what you really specialize in depends, of course, on what you did before. And it depends on your internship, on your professional year. So in general, of course, our MIA students have their eye more towards the international jobs. Our MPP students often work more in sort of data-related jobs. But in principle, career paths overlap depending on, it's more sort of what you focus on as a student than whether you do the MPP or the MIA. But that would be something, I think we're going to be joined later at 4 p.m. by our alumni team as well. So that would be something in our careers team. So that would be something to ask them as well. Okay, one more question maybe, yeah?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there is an answer to this, but is there a sort of standard kind of evaluation approach, like at courses in terms of like paper writing or sort of old-fashioned exams, like how that's sort of handled or thought about?
Okay, so the question here was about how we assess you when you study with us in very, very many different ways. So we've got exams, especially, for example, for the economics and statistics classes, but also on some of the core modules. Some of us had essays, some of us had research design papers. A lot of us said sort of perhaps more unusual forms of assessment, such as writing an op-ed, writing policy briefs, writing memos. For example, in my own course, students write a memo on how they would translate a particular piece of research into policy recommendations or policy relevant, into policy relevant research. So it really depends. Many of us count presentations, oral participation, and we've got a policy that we can't have just one assignment per course. Right? There need to be several. So you're in none of your courses will your grade be determined by just one exam or by just one assignment. Right? The very back.
During the placement year that happens between the first and the second year, does Hertie have any sort of partnerships, and do they help locate the students?
Thanks for the question. So that was about sort of internship, professional. Yeah, I'll talk about that as a next step, second next step. Yeah. Okay, shall I move on maybe? And then if there are more questions on, one last question on the curriculum.
So could you elaborate on the usual weekly workload? Like what extent does the curriculum allow students to work part-time? How many days?
Yeah, so many of our students work. I couldn't tell you whether everyone does, but I think there's a limit of 20 hours per week also under, if I understand correctly, under German law. As a student, you can't work more. Probably I would not necessarily recommend to work 20 hours. I think the program is pretty intense as it is. if you are interested in working, I think it would be worth discussing, for example, with our curricular affairs team or with myself at the beginning of the year, sort of when are the peak times, right? So for example, at the moment, our second year students are really, really busy, right? So they have coursework, they're working on their master's thesis, they're applying for jobs, they're preparing, like next week is an exam week, right? So it's pretty intense as a program. So I would probably not recommend to work like more than perhaps a day and a half a week, but a lot of students do also to help finance their studies, of course. Yeah? Okay, great. So at the beginning I talked about the international outlook of the school, and I gave you sort of the background of the students. But sort of, when I talked about international, I also mean our partners. So we have various ways in which we can send you away during your studies, but also obviously welcome other students to Hertie. So we've got dual degree programs of two kinds. Fixed track, where from the moment you enter the school, you know you do 1 year at the Hertie School and another year at Sciences Po, Paris, or at the Maxwell School of Syracuse University in the US. We're in the final stages of negotiating a new dual degree for our MIA program with the North American University. And you know from the start that you're going to be in those two institutions, okay, for your studies, right? Dual MPP or dual MPP, with Sciences Po, or dual MPP or MIA with the Maxwell School. But we also have dual degree programs for which you can apply whilst you're here. So if during your first year you think about, or maybe from the start you were thinking about doing your second year somewhere else, you can apply for one of our dual degree programs. And we've got at the moment 4 partners, Bocconi in Italy, we've got the LSE in the UK, we've got GRASP at the University of Tokyo, and we've got SIPA at Columbia University in New York. And again, we are currently negotiating with one of our partners to extend our dual degree offer for the MIA in particular. So these would be programs you would be applying for whilst you are here. But you may also be interested in not going away for an entire year, but just for a semester. And then we have lots of exchange partners around the world, right? So, for example, Duke in the US, we work with Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore. We work, you can see University of British Columbia, lots of different universities around the world where you could go on exchange, and students from those universities come to us in the second year. So for many of you, even if you start in September, your second year will look quite different in terms of with who you study. Some of your colleagues might be away for a professional year, some of them might be away for exchange or for dual degree, and then new students come in from some of our partner institutions. So careers, slide jump from exchange to careers. So one of you asked before, where do our students go? And I said before that it depends very much on your individual trajectory. It depends on what you studied before, depends on what you study with us, not just the program, but also your area of concentration and your thesis. But it also depends on your internship, on what you've been doing, or what you are doing professionally while you're here. And our careers team has recognized that, and what they've developed is a career development roadmap. And my two colleagues in careers and their team really work with students individually when they arrive. You do a sort of a placement with them, like a placement for placing yourself on their career map, identifying your own needs. They hold various workshops, and they really accompany you throughout your Hertie career in view of careers in the wider world. They do I think, fantastic job doing that, and the students really, I think, appreciate this more individual approach rather than... We also have general career events, of course, where we bring partners in who present, where we bring business in, where we bring consultancies in. Some of our colleagues, for example, my colleague Leon Hood works on energy, special electricity. He would bring energy partners in and have an evening with them and with students who are interested in working in that particular area. But we also have this roadmap which really accompanies you throughout your years at the school. So there was a question at the back earlier about the professional year. So the professional year means that you go away for 1 year and do paid work with one of our partner organizations. Some of them you see here, right? So for example, Partnerschaft Deutschland, which is a consultancy, Federal Ministry of Health, McKinsey. So we have different partners for our professional year, for which you can apply. Several students and our careers team works with you identifying what would be the right destination for you if this is something you wish to do. We also have students who simply take a gap year and go elsewhere to work for a year. Right? So that also, you can also self-organize that. It doesn't have to be one of our professional year partners. Right? We have a little bit similar to our fixed track dual degree, also a so-called integrated professional year for which you could be applying even before you start to study. Where when you start to study, you know you will spend the first year at Hertie, the second year at our this particular partner, PD, Partnerschaft Deutschland, which is sort of the public sector consultancy in Germany, and where you know you spend your third year at Hertie again. So most students who do a professional year do sort of the standard one, but there's now also this integrated option. And where do our students go? So many different career destinations. So we've got about a third work in business, 35%, a bit more than a quarter in the public sector, international organizations, 12%. I should say that international organizations, personally, I would expect to rise a little bit. The MIA is still a new program, right? So we are graduating our third cohort this summer. So I expect to I expect Hertie presence in international organizations to go up in future. But quite a few of your colleagues, of our alumni, work in NGOs and foundations, and then research and think tanks as well. Several of them stay with us and do a PhD after they've done their degrees with us. So some of you hold offers. Some of you are thinking about applying. Many of you may be interested in questions of financial aid, right? What do we do in terms of scholarships and financial aid? I would suggest that if you have questions on that, you hold off a little bit and ask my colleagues later on, especially from recruitment and admissions and financial aid, about concrete options for you, chances for you, because they will invariably know a lot more than I do about this. But I just give you the general picture. We've got 3 scholarships with deadlines coming up. All of them, well, 2 of them on the 1st of April, 1 of them on the 1st of May. The first one is on sustainability and energy policy. You may remember that at the beginning I talked about those centers of competence and where we are focusing sort of our efforts in future. So this is, in a sense, it's not a center scholarship, but it's linked to what's going to happen in that center. We've got an international security policy scholarship, only for MIA students, again linked to our security center. And we've got a new scholarships. Anyone from Brazil by any chance? Ah, okay, great. You should definitely talk to Benny if you haven't done so already, for public servants in Brazil by the República Foundation. And that deadline is the 1st of May. But even if you don't hold one of those scholarships there, then there are lots of ways in which we can waive parts of your fees. And last year, about 50% of students had some form of support in the shape and form of a tuition waiver. Okay. So I think one thing I wanted to mention, maybe it's very clear to you, but we have several teams in place that would be looking, or that are already looking after you in the obviously recruitment and admissions process. My colleague Benjamin Steffen is in the back, for example. Many of you may have already been in touch with Benjamin. We've got a student affairs team that does various things from student welfare, supports you with visas, work on financial aid, but also work very closely with our student representation and organize a lot of fun activities on the side. We've got the curricular affairs team. They work with me on teaching planning, right? What we teach, how we teach, how we plan our curriculum. question earlier, for example, about assignments, assessments. The career development team I already mentioned, and then alumni affairs who would work with you once you have left the school, and if you wanted to stay in touch. And yeah, I would like to basically leave you with how shall I call it? It's not a picture, with a slide. We're working on our, so we call this who are we at the moment, and we had a big survey with our students and alumni and asked them what's the first sort of word that comes into their mind when they think about Hertie. And this is what came into their mind. And yeah, international and community was something that came up very, very strongly. So yeah, I just leave this on perhaps whilst you ask more questions. Benny, how are we doing for time? I don't have a what? 15 minutes. Okay, great. So yeah, question at the.
I just have a question concerning like Hertie internal governance structures.
Mm-hmm.
So how are students integrated into decision making at Hertie?
Yeah. The governance of the governance school, which is something that always interests us too. So the Hertie School is organized in the following way. So we've got sort of the school leadership, which is the president and the managing director. And then there are 3 deans. So I'm doing teaching, my colleague Mark Hallerberg is doing research, and my colleague Andrea Römmel is doing executive education. And so we are sort of the school leadership for the sort of day-to-day decisions. The students are organized in the Hertie School Student Representation, HSR, and each program has 2 representatives per year, if I'm not mistaken, and they are the council. I think there are about 16 on there. It also includes the EMPA and the PhD program, and they elect something which is called the board, which is the president, the vice president, and the treasurer. So that is, in a sense, sort of the representation of the students. And then we've got one main sort of decision, our main democratic body is the Senate. So that's typical now that all German universities have a Senate that takes all decisions, and you've got student representation on the Senate. So being involved in the decision, in the decision process, but also informed. So these are, in a sense, sort of the formal layers. But then there's a lot of informal coordination going on. So it's a small, I mean, you can sense that this is a small place, right? I mean, we are on 3 stories of a building. We are not huge, and we're talking to each other a lot. So one forum we have once per semester is called the Old School Meeting. It's where everyone comes together. Well, everyone wants to come together. Usually not everyone comes, but students, PhD students, research associates, EMPA students, if they are around, faculty, staff, and our president sort of chairs it, talks about general developments of the school, and then it's sort of Q&A for an hour. Anything and everything can come up in these meetings. And then we also have meetings by we, I mean the president, the managing director, and myself, because in my students are sort of in my portfolio. We meet with a HSR board at least once a semester, often twice, to discuss what's going on, whether there are any pressing concerns, or also just simply to swap notes how things are going. And one initiative, for example, we're working on at the moment is our diversity strategy, where we feel we need to do a bit of work and a bit more systematic thinking. So we've got a diversity task force, and there we also have 2 student representatives on the task force. So I think students are generally well integrated. It depends very much also on how you want to organize yourself. So we've got a lot of clubs, student clubs, for example, that are also funded. So, but I think in general, so the formal structures aside, there's a lot of communication going on at the school between students, but also between all of us. Both vertical and horizontal governance, I would say. Right? Yes?
I read somewhere on the website that you have a transatlantic dialogue scholarship. Is that still relevant, or did I misread something?
Did you misread something, Benny? Sorry, can you?
Transatlantic
It was, the deadline was last week? No.
No, the deadline was 1st of February, but we had the interviews 2 weeks ago, and we just notified this year's transatlantic leadership
It's
scholarship
out
order.
annually on a rolling basis.
So this student who's is here for in view of 2021, right? You are looking not for entry in 2019 but 2020.
Yeah.
So you're planning well ahead. That's why the question.
You can apply until February next year.
So the question was about the transatlantic leadership scholarship, which had a deadline of in February and which was decided already. But that will come up again. Yes.
I have a general question about accommodation in Berlin.
Mhm.
Are there ways students, prospective students, can seek help from Hertie for finding accommodation in Berlin? For example, whether students, affairs.
So we don't have housing as such. So we don't have student houses or halls of residence. I presume that knowing student affairs, they probably have also all sorts of supporting material. I don't know how they help you on an everyday basis. So I don't know whether they would not obviously go out and look for flats for you, but I presume they support you in their search. But Benny, do you know?
Yes, they do, as a matter of fact. So student affairs is the office which is responsible in helping you with all non-curricular issues, like housing, visa, health, insurance, for instance, and we do not
Want the
have
mic, Benny?
accommodation for you per se, but our student affairs team can help you finding accommodation here in Berlin. I think that's fine. So.
Keep it, just in case. So the question was about support for accommodation, and Benny says student affairs is your team helping with that, short of having halls of residence and being able to fix accommodation for you, just to manage expectations. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a few questions regarding the dual degree program.
Mm-hmm.
First, how is the application process?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Everything that goes through the microphone is automatically recorded. So we are also recording the Q&A for people who can't be here, so that they can hear your questions, and probably they might have similar ones.
Okay, well then my questions were regarding the dual degree programs.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is, how is the application process? The second one is, how would the curriculum look for a dual degree student? And then the third one is about the tuition. Like, for example, would the student pay Hertie School of Governance tuition if you go to, for example, Columbia University, or do you have to pay Columbia University's tuition?
Mm-hmm. So you would, someone will be there from study abroad later, so probably best to ask them the tuition question, because I don't want to say anything wrong here, because it varies depending on whether you go for exchange or for a dual degree or a fixed track dual degree, and I don't want to give you any figures which are maybe not 100% correct, but I can say something about the application process. So if you're applying for a fixed track dual degree, you would apply with a partner institution for the fixed track, but that would mean you would have had to already apply to Sciences Po or to the Maxwell School in Syracuse. If it's for a normal dual degree, the deadline for applications is in January. You apply to us, but our partner institution decides. Right? Sometimes the partner asks us for a ranking a priori, where we then look at grades, but also at personal motivation and fit. But the decision is taken by the partner. So what we need to look out for is balance. Right? So we can't send, for example, 25 students to Columbia and then 5 only come from Columbia. So we look for a balanced relationship, and that this year seems to be working out well. But that's something we have to always keep in mind. But the application deadline is in January. In terms of the curriculum, so this would depend on where you go. And it's something you would inform yourself before you apply. Whether actually when you go to Bocconi, for example, or when you go to SIPA, there's lots of choice, or depending on where you go, there will be a different curriculum. So when we set up these dual degrees, we obviously check that it's compatible, right, with what we do, and that you have the chance to take courses in your area of interest, because you would receive a dual degree you would also receive an MPP from Hertie. So we need to be sure that the curricula match. So we're just doing this for the new dual degree. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, and for the tuition, you ask my colleagues later. Yes.
My question is, does Hertie offer any extracurricular language courses which you can partake as a student? Or
So we offer German courses, but no other language courses. This comes up. I should give you a longer answer because this is something that comes up regularly. So we are not big enough to organize sort of language courses in many different languages. I think if you're interested in language schools and where you can study languages in Berlin, again, Student Affairs can point you to places, and we have links to several language schools, but we don't organize them in-house. The German, we've got some German courses before you come, like during orientation week. We have some during the year. It's also something we are working on at the moment, because we've had German courses and often students sign up but then don't show up. So it's been a little bit challenging. So we are currently thinking about how can we optimize our offer so that we offer what you are interested in, and then what we offer is also taken up. But German, we do offer German courses, but yeah, that's probably less relevant for your colleagues though. Okay.
I'm just wondering about the careers later on after this master's degree. As I see it, at least in the German market, I will be competing with students who have taken a law degree or a normal degree in policy. And I'm wondering, why should an employee take a student from Hertie instead of a normal law student, or somebody who did like normal policy, especially?
So what would be normal policy? You mean like a standard political science or international relations? Or, yeah?
Like at HU Berlin, for example. Because I'm seeing currently in the institutions, they're mainly law students, very much present. And the second question is regarding careers in the European Union. Do you have connections there? And how many students are going to work percent-wise for the European Union?
For the European Union? Okay, that I cannot answer. I don't know the percentage of students who work for the European Union. I know that we have links to the institutions, and we bring in, we've got, like, if I'm not mistaken, we bring in, for example, EPSO, the personnel office, to come here, and talk. So why should someone employ you rather than a lawyer? So it probably depends on the job you want to apply for. So if you want to become a standard German civil servant in the Ministry of the Interior, you probably have a head start if you're a lawyer. And I think there's no why, like, we shouldn't deny that, right? But I think there's a lot sort of that makes our students quite special, I think, for German employers. And I think the international, right? Employers know that you've been trained in English, but that is not the only thing. You've been working together in different formats and with different types of assignment and in different ways with students from all over the world. This is not necessarily something you do at all German universities on such a constant basis. It's an intense program. There's a lot of pressure on the program. I think we train you very well, especially, hello Slava, in data science and statistics. So I think in terms of our outlook on public policy, both international and sort of public policy more sort of broadly conceived, in combination with sort of training you in economics, training you in statistics, putting this focus, right, on a professional year, if you wish to do it, on the internship, on these professional development courses. I don't think that's standard at all in most German universities. So this sort of the international outlook, but also the outlook towards the world during your studies, I think is something that sort of makes our students, I think, quite special. And I think employers tend to agree. Okay, so let's take 2 more questions. And then, since Slava is here, I would ask you then to keep all the other questions in mind for later when we move into sort of next door, where we have the stalls and where colleagues are also joining from these various teams here. Okay, but let's take 2 more and then...
Okay. So my question is, you mentioned that one of the courses that you're able to take as an elective is called Diversity in Public Institutions, or similar to that?
It's, I think, called Managing Diversity in the Public Sector.
Okay. So to what extent are courses offered that would apply to both the public and the private sector? Because for me, for example, I'm still unsure about what sector to enter later on. So
Right, that's a good question, because also at the beginning I talked about our approach, like we're interdisciplinary, right? We're international and we're intersectoral. So we always will have courses that also have a third sector focus. Some of them combine all three, right? So for example, management and leadership. Some of them are more targeted at the public sector, for example, like the diversity in the public sector. I would say, like, even if you were to take a public sector course and managing diversity there, I would assume that some of the skills approaches you learn there, you could be probably transferred to the third sector, but we make sure that we have all three sectors in our curriculum. Yeah, and last question at the back. Oh, and one at the front. You already have the mic. Okay, then you go.
I have a question regarding the professional year and internship experience. I noticed that most of the organizations you partner with are based in the EU and Schengen area, and I'm curious, from the past years, are these organizations able to sponsor visas for those who come from outside of the EU and Schengen area to continue working with them?
Mm-hmm. So this is something I would suggest you discuss with our careers team, because just like on fees, on visas, I do not want to say anything which may potentially not be 100% correct. Not all of these, some of these partners require students to speak German, not all of them. For example, we have a student who's from India, and she did her professional year in Bonn with the UN Staff College. And that was not a problem at all. And she's also now going to look for a job here. I think you have a certain amount of time to look for a job in Germany, even if you're from outside the EU and the Schengen area. But this is something I would suggest you address to our careers team, because they will be better answering it. Okay? It's an important question. And now the last question.
Yeah, so regarding the diversity part, because I just noticed something, I'm currently also working in a field that involves a lot of gender concerns mainstreaming into policy. So and it's becoming like a very relevant, a lot of donors are looking for that in like all sorts of projects. So I was wondering whether during the course of the MPP and the MIA, of course, like, is there any focus in that, or how does it integrate how to train like, these methodologies?
Okay. All right. So in terms of, since I do not want to raise false expectations, we do not have a focus on feminism, gender, diversity as such, right? In our courses, but that doesn't mean we don't do it. Right? So we do. We've got a professional development course, for example, on intercultural awareness. We're currently working on a second professional development course, which is going to be on unconscious bias in the workplace. And we're, together with our Director of Curricular Affairs, I'm currently planning the teaching portfolio for next year. And we've already talked about needing a course on gender and public policy. So we are aware that there's a need, and we're working on it. It's not our mainstream curriculum, I should, however, say, just to manage expectations. I don't want to promise anything we can't deliver.